One of the things that appeals to Americans in casting productions over there is that they often go to Australians because there's a certain rawness and an earthiness to them that they feel is harder to find there, where things are all a bit glossy.
Hi, I'm Jenny Cooney, film journalist and host of the podcast Aussies in Hollywood. I am thrilled to introduce NFSA Presents Inspire, conversations about the craft, talent and ambition of all our favourite Aussies in front of and behind the camera. I've got Damon Herriman here at this time. So hi, Damon, how are you?
Hi, Jenny, I'm good. Nice to see you.
Good. Well, let's get right into it and start off with your first or most, influential Australian cinema memory.
Well, my first Australian cinema memory was seeing Caddy at the drive-in in Alice Springs, which is going way back. I was very small. I was probably too young to be seeing Caddy. I can't remember exactly what happens in Caddy, but it certainly wasn't a kid's film. So that was my first Australian film that I saw at a cinema, or in this case, the drive-in. Most influential is very, very hard to pick. I don't know if I can even pick most influential because there are just sort of too many. But Caddy was the first.
What about when you were young? Were there certain movies you just have a clear memory of sitting, watching and being in awe of, or wishing you were part of?
Probably the ones that I remember. Oh, you know what? Storm Boy as well. Absolutely was obsessed with. Anybody who was a little kid in the 70s went to see Storm Boy. And yeah, I was pretty obsessed with that. And then of course, if you go outside of Australia, Mary Poppins, I think might have been the very first film that wasn't Australian that I saw at a cinema. Even though obviously it was released way before I was born, but it was being re-released at the cinema for some reason. What else? Watership Down, Star Wars, memories of movies I saw as a kid. Benji, remember Benji?
I do.
About the dog, yeah.
I'm assuming you saw the great Aussie movies like Gallipoli and things like that.
I did. Yep. I saw Gallipoli, Breaker Morant, actually Picnic at Hanging Rock, which terrified me because I was probably about 7 years old or something, maybe even younger. Yeah, there weren't too many. We were living in Alice Springs at the time. I wasn't born there, but I was living there for 5 years when I was a kid. So there weren't too many options when it came to what you were going to go to see at the movies. So sometimes there were movies that were probably more for adults than for kids. I remember being terrified by the spiral staircase when I was about 6 years old. Not an ideal film for a small child, but yeah.
So what films, music or stories do you find yourself going back to over and over again?
I mean, in a general sense, music-wise, the Beatles. I mean, I'm a massive Beatles fan, so that they'll always be in my life. I was trying to think of like an Australian film example. The film I think I've probably seen the most, the Australian film I've seen the most, is Two Hands. I actually saw Two Hands 4 times at the movies. I don't think there's another film from anywhere that I saw that many times at the movies. I just loved that film so much when it came out. I haven't seen it for a while, so I feel like I'm probably overdue another watch.
Wow, that's an interesting one to choose.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't quite fit the bill of films I keep going back to because I haven't seen it in a long time. But at the time, I kept going back to it because I saw it 4 times within about 2 months at the cinema. Yeah, I think I was just incredibly impressed by. It just didn't. It felt very Australian, but it also didn't feel like any Australian film I'd seen. It kind of, it captured an Australianness, but it didn't feel overly familiar. And it was very funny. It was, it moved me as well. I think that film really did, yeah, for me, seeing that film in the 90s, I guess I was, yeah, in my late 20s when I saw it. And yeah, it just blew me away.
So, in your opinion, what's the secret sauce for Australian cinematic success?
Yeah, if only we knew exactly what that was, we could bottle it. But I mean, I think it's partly just that sort of laconic, dry sense of humor, that Australian sense of humor, that is sort of hard to pin down exactly what that is. But you know, everyone knows what you mean, especially if you've been overseas and people don't have it. I think there's something in Australian cinema that captures that dryness. There's also a certain earthiness and a rawness, both in the production and often in the performances. You sort of hear that in America sometimes, that one of the things that appeals to Americans in casting productions over there is that they often go to Australians because there's a certain rawness and an earthiness to them that they feel is harder to find there, where things are all a bit glossy.
And when it comes to Australians in Hollywood, do you think we sort of punch above our weight over there?
100%. I mean, you know, when you look at our population compared with how many actors have worked in Hollywood over the years, it's kind of remarkable. And they comment on it too. You know, rarely is there a job that you will film in America where the American cast or crew don't say, "God damn, you Aussies are everywhere." You know, it's always something they talk about.
So when you reflect on your career, what does ambition mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, despite the fact that I have sort of left Australia and gone over and worked in America and had many years of not working and kept going, I've never actually been that ambitious, which it seems kind of, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's honestly the truth. I act because I enjoy it, and I don't know what else I do. And anything else that really resembles ambition is just me trying to avoid regret. You know, so many of the decisions I've made in terms of going to America and sticking it out over many years when I wasn't working was not because I had so much self-belief that I thought I was going to work and damn it, I was going to stay there till I proved it. It was just that I wanted to be absolutely sure that I wouldn't regret it later if I hadn't stayed for long enough. So, you know, when I first went there, I went for a 3-month trip, and then 6 months later, I did another 3-month trip, and then I did a third 3-month trip. And I was never going to go back after that third 3-month trip if I didn't get a job, because by then I felt, okay, I've proven to myself I'm not going to work here. I don't need to be convinced anymore. And I just happened to get a guest role in that third trip, and that sort of reset everything and made me think about, okay, well, maybe I can work here, you know.
So what element of filmmaking craft fascinates you the most, besides the one you're obviously in?
It'd probably be a toss-up between a few. I really like screenwriting, and I like to do that myself. So I guess, I mean, I'm not officially in it because I haven't sold any scripts, but I do like writing, and that's something I do a lot in my spare time between jobs. Directing, I think, is really interesting, and the different methods of directors, you know, how much they say, how much they don't say, the different ways directors work is really interesting to me. And I think probably the one thing that is so foreign but I find fascinating is cinematography. I do like to, you know, see how they frame a shot, whether they decide it to be a locked off shot or whether to, you know, handheld, move the camera, keep it still, all those decisions. Yeah, I find it fascinating because there are so many different ways to tell a story, and a lot of it is dependent on what you are doing with the camera. And you could get one scene that's just shot on a, two people sitting on a bench in one locked off wide shot, and another production could do the exact same scene where it's cutting between two singles, and a camera's moving around them or whatever. So I find probably cinematography would be my main answer to that.
What does the National Film and Sound Archive mean to you?
I think having the National Film and Sound Archive is absolutely essential. I'm quite a nostalgic person, and very much so when it comes to film and TV stuff. And when you hear that, you'll occasionally hear that so many episodes of a TV show have been lost forever. I always find that incredibly sad. I'm like, no, there must be some somewhere. Because we need to be able to go back and look at our past and who we were and what we made. And having the National Film and Sound Archive there to not only store that stuff, but store it in a condition where it's going to be available to watch for the decades to come. Because there's no point keeping stuff if it's also unwatchable when you go back to look at it. So I think it's absolutely necessary, and I'm very glad it exists.
So you're really happy that they collect and preserve and share it to inspire future generations?
100%. I think I can't even imagine. It would be a very sad day to not have a National Film and Sound Archive. I think the ability to go back and look at our past is so incredibly important. I was thinking of just recently having seen that film that Peter Jackson made, where he took that old World War I footage and made that incredible film where you felt like you were there due to the incredible restoration he did. It's absolutely essential, and I hope it's not going anywhere.
So which Aussie inspired you as you were coming up in your career?
Look, when I look way back, when I was a little kid starting, I was very inspired by Greg Rowe from Stormboy, because he was a few years older than me, but he was also from Adelaide, and he was a kid actor when I was, he was probably 12 when I was 7 or something, but he was someone to kind of, look up to and think, oh, wow, you can be a kid from Adelaide and be an actor and stuff. And so that there was certainly Greg Rowe back then. Now I feel like I'm constantly inspired by my friend Ben Mendelsohn. I mean, he's an old mate. We did The Big Steal together. But pretty much from seeing him in the Henderson Kids and Yeah, My Voice Broke onwards, I've just always been such a fan of his work, and so kind of excited by this resurgence in his career that took place over the last few years after Animal Kingdom. I could literally watch him read the phone book. I find him so interesting on screen, and so raw and honest, and just one of the greatest actors Australia's ever produced, and a career to be incredibly envious of for any actor.
And now, who currently inspires you? Who do you think should be on the radar of the NFSA?
Two actors come to mind because they were both in the same Heath Ledger Scholarship finals a few years ago, and I was a pre-judge on that in terms of taking the hundreds of entrants and whittling them down to a smaller number. And the two people that stood out to me, neither of them won that year, but they did both go on to do really well. One's a guy called Mojan Arya, and then there's a girl called Geraldine Viswanathan. And both of them, since that time, which was probably 5 years ago now, have gone on to do exceptional work, and are really starting to break through in America at the moment. So I would absolutely keep your eye on both of them.
So the NFA is opening an exhibition, Australians in Hollywood, as you know, celebrating the craft and talent of Australians at home and overseas. What in your mind is there to celebrate?
Well, I guess, like you said earlier, just that Australians really do punch above their weight in terms of working internationally in film and television. You know, for our population size, for a number of decades now, we really have popped up in some wonderful productions from all around the world. And yeah, I think that is worth celebrating. You know, Aussies are kind of funny with this stuff because we don't like to pat ourselves on the back too much, get too kind of excited about success. But or if we do, it's probably more to do with sports. You know, we kind of do that with sports more than the arts. But I think it's great that the National Film and Sound Archive are doing it for Australians who are working in film and TV overseas.
So part of their whole philosophy is that we should be letting go of the cultural cringe and just celebrating, right? Even though it's not in our nature.
That's right. I know it's kind of almost in our DNA not to do that, but we kind of have to fight against it a bit.
So did any Australians help you in the early days of your career in Hollywood?
Yeah, when I first went to Los Angeles, I was really taken care of by an actor called Kate Behan, who I'm sure people may know from things like Chopper and Flight Plan, which she'd shot with Jodie Foster over there not long before I was first over there in 2004-05. Kate was a godsend, really. She'd been there for a few years. She knew the ropes. I knew nothing. And she was not only great company and a great friend, but she also just knew how it worked and kind of took me through the process of, well, what's it like going into an American audition? What's it like going into an American job? So she was absolutely someone I could not have done without, and I'll be forever thankful.
So what's your advice to Aussies dreaming of Hollywood watching this right now?
When I give advice to Aussies about going to Hollywood, I'm usually like the really like boring uncle who's giving like really practical advice that's not that exciting. I normally say things like, be realistic, because it's very easy to get, you know, the stars in your eyes about how exciting it all is. But, you know, the truth of the matter is there are thousands and thousands of actors in America. And when you go over there, unless you're one of the lucky people who's been kind of plucked out of something over here and they send you straight into stardom, you're normally just part of this pool of actors there. And there are tens of thousands of actors in LA alone. And so I would just say, if it's truly your dream to go to America and that's something that you'll regret if you don't do it, by all means do it, if for no other reason than for a cool life experience. But just be very aware that, you know, you need to have some savings so you can eat and pay rent, and that it's not going to be a matter of just plopping on the doorstep of LA and then going straight into rooms for auditions. It's hard to get an agent and a manager. It's hard to get auditions. Some people are incredibly lucky. And look, I say this all the time. Most of it, I think, is luck and timing. You know, not to say you don't need to be able to act as well, but there is so much luck and timing involved. And just be aware of that, you know, and look at it as something that's a life experience that also is following a dream. But I just wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't bet the house on it, because you got to look after your mental health as well, and you don't want to be sitting over in LA struggling to pay the rent, wondering what's happened to your life because you're broke now. So it's a really depressing answer, but it's also the truth. But and I would say, look, having said all that, there are exceptions to every rule, and there are people who do go over there and within 2 weeks they've landed some amazing job. So look, there are no rules really to any of it, but yeah, in a nutshell, be realistic would be my words of semi-wisdom.
But go for it anyway.
Go for it anyway if you feel like you're going to regret it, because as I said, that's pretty much what I did. It was really just a regret involved. I would call it regret insurance. I was going for regret insurance. I didn't want to wonder what might have happened, and I was perfectly okay with going there, failing, and coming home, just because I knew, all right, well, now I did that. I don't have to wonder anymore. If you feel like you're going to be someone who regrets stuff, which I am, then by all means, give it a shot. Go over there for 3 months or 6 months, and maybe go with a friend. So you've got a buddy to hang out with. It could be a lot of fun.
Well, thank you, Damon Herriman, and thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode of NFSA Presents Inspired.
Thanks, Jenny.